have many.
Yeah,
HDMI,
it's
yep.
good.
Mini
that
display.
works too. Okay,
Yeah.
great. So you have it.
Yep. All right, cool.
We're just streaming two is the problem. Or
Just streaming
we're
what?
streaming one and we just have the second one, but we're just gonna make this one.
Cool.
Yeah, but it looks like we're good to start.
Awesome. All right. Welcome, everybody. Let me get into the frame. Welcome, everybody, to the June 2015, rather, edition of Ember NYC. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. We've got a fun lineup tonight of many of you. So when we were thinking about this month's meetup, Matthew Beal, who you'll be hearing from later, said, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did kind of a community showcase and got to hear from a bunch of different companies in the community, get to see what they're doing with Ember, hear kind of what they're focused on next, challenges, etc." And I said, "Yeah, that sounds awesome. Will you do all the work to collect everybody?" And Matthew said, "Sure, of course." So that's going to be the lineup for tonight. We'll have an opportunity to do some panel Q&A with everybody who's presenting, and then when we're all wrapped up, we'll go out for a drink and a bite. But before we get into it all, I want to make a few announcements and thank our sponsors. So first off, the next meeting like this one, our monthly evening of talks, is going to be the fourth Thursday in July. It's always the fourth Thursday, so that's July 23rd this month, or this year. I am looking for talks, so if you have something you'd like to present, definitely reach out. As many of you know, we also do some smaller events over the course of time, and it looks like we have not yet announced this meetup, so I'm going to announce it now on screen live. So this one is going to be Monday, July 6th, and it's these are project nights, and what project nights are generally smaller than this group, hands-on as opposed to having a speaker. Sometimes there's a little informal talk, but a lot of kind of collaboration and hacking and working in pairs or small groups. And the theme of the next one is open source. So come with an open source project that you want to work on, or join somebody else in working on a project that they've got underway, or even find a project online that can benefit from a bug fix, some improved documentation, anything like that. If you've never committed to an open source project before and you want to learn how, definitely come out and we'll help you do that. It's a lot of fun. So that is Monday, July 6th. RSVPs are open now. We charge, as you can see here, we charge $1 per person for these smaller events, mainly to make sure that you guys show up, because with the smaller group, we hate to sell out and then not have space, or then have plenty of space. So next up, I want to take a minute to thank our sponsors. Pivotal Labs, where we are today, has been hosting us for about 2.5 years plus. Been incredibly welcoming and have as a great space with great technology that we're able to use for the events. Pivotal is a consultancy that does both startup and enterprise work. They're focused on agile software development and some of the best at it. And if you are either looking for a job where you're going to get to learn how to do agile hands-on, or you're looking to hire somebody to help your project or company get started, you should definitely talk to Pivotal, and I'm happy to connect you to the right people there. We also have our Project Night sponsors, Simple Reach. I know some Simple Reachers are here. Where are you? There we go. Hi, Andre and Hagen. Simple Reach hosts our Project Nights regularly, as does Movable Ink. Anybody from Movable Ink here tonight? I didn't see anybody yet, but Michael Nutt and Lee Bankowitz, they're great and fantastic hosts as well. So we really appreciate them. My company, Yap and Yap Labs. Yap is a product startup for regular folks with no tech skills to create mobile apps, and Yap Labs is a Ember consulting and training company here in New York. So those are our sponsors for the meetup. We really appreciate them all. And without further ado, I want to introduce my friend Matthew, who is a member of the Ember core team. He's been working heavily. We did a ton of work on HTML bars. He also runs a fantastic Ember consultancy, focused a lot on open source work, but helps a lot of companies in the New York area and beyond. That company is called 201 Created, and hopefully he'll tell us some more about that. So please welcome to the Ember NYC stage, Matthew Beal.
Howdy. Gonna plug this in for the shortest number of slides you've ever seen. You just wait.
While you're doing that, Matthew, I forgot to do something I forgot to do something that I always do, which is to open the floor to announcements from you guys. I know many of you are presenting, so if those of you who are presenting, are hiring, or have announcements, feel free to incorporate it into your talk. Anybody else that's not presenting who has something that they want to announce or share, it might be you're looking for work, it might be you're looking to hire somebody, there's an event that we should know about. Anybody? Okay, cool, you're on.
All right. Cool. Awesome. Thank you all for being here today. The idea behind this meetup, like Luke said, was that we would get a bunch of people to get up here and participate and talk about how their companies use Ember now, and like some of the challenges that they've hit, some of the rough patches, some of the great things that they've found, and see how that changes over time. So like the 2.0 beta came out a week and a half ago, and it was on June 12th. And on July 24th, I believe, is when the actual like final date for 2.0 is going to be. So it'll be a nice celebration for us. It'll be a chance for us to get rid of a lot of things that were kind of left behind. You guys might, like, this is my photo on Twitter, and this photo is pretty old. It's from when I was in Europe at Ember Fest, a conference that happens. That's going to be in the UK this year. So that was a long time ago, and I had pretty short hair, but just like any open source project, as time went on, I got more and more hairy and had like some things that people didn't want to see. So the aim of 2.0 isn't that we like add more to this, wonderful pile, but instead that we try and clean it up. So I went to the barber today to make sure we were all good. Anyway, so that's the marketing message for 2.0. You should probably not tell your boss. The three groups that we're going to run through today are going to be fresh perspectives. So these are people who started using Ember somewhere in between 4 months ago and I think 10 months ago. So people who are got on the train fairly early. They've been through a bunch of the bumps that we've had with how we refactored the rendering layer, but in a lot of ways they don't have a lot of like the legacy concepts that some of you have been using Ember for a really long time might be familiar with. Sorry, the other group is the steady hands, and steady hands are people who have been for under 2 years. So these are people who started around 1.0. So around like 1.1, I think, is the first one of them, up to 1.5. And then the very last group is going to be the marathon runners. And these are people who have been using Ember and SparkCore apps for a really long time, years in one of the cases. So their experiences are obviously going to be very different than the people for 4 months. What we're going to do is run through these 3 groups, and we're going to have like 3 people come from this first group, and minutes to, sorry, they're each going to get 5 minutes. They're each going to get 5 minutes to present on their topic. We're going to try and hold questions until the end of the 3 people, and then we'll go ahead and let them discuss those questions as a panel. We also have joining us from Texas, the Austin Meetup. So there are a couple of people hanging out down there. Thanks to Kevin for figuring out how to set up the streaming setup. Thank you, Kevin. And they're going to like tweet over some questions and things like that, so we can have a discussion about these things as well. So then the first person we'd like to bring up is Hassan. Hassan has been working with Ember for a good while now, but he has recently has a new gig at Monograph, and hopefully he's going to tell us a little bit about what Monograph has been up to and about what kinds of things he's been learning about Ember as he starts a new project and a new code base, all that good stuff. Awesome. Give him a round of applause.
Hey, everyone.
Just get the mic so that the...
Hey, everyone. So many of you probably were at Wicked Good Ember, and maybe at the very last presentation, you probably remember a guy named Chris Z talking about card stack. And at the very last slide of the very last presentation, right before the ferry is about to leave, you probably saw this insignia here, Monograph. He's like, hey, I'm working for Monograph. So I guess I'm going to be talking to you a little bit more about what Monograph actually is. Okay, so I don't have much time here, so I'm just going to kind of go through this pretty quick. Okay, so what is Monograph? Monograph is the future of digital rights management. So our secret sauce is that we are actually leveraging the Bitcoin blockchain to provide a means by which we can verify authenticity for rights, for creative works. And the idea here is that we're going to revolutionize the way that content is shared and created. And we're going to create new marketplaces that didn't exist before, because we can now do all sorts of things that was previously done by lawyers and back offices instantly, so that we can create a connection between the creator of content and the consumer of content with with complete legal contracts. And so I would love to give you a demo of my app, but again, really time constrained. So I'm going to show you just a few screenshots here. So the thing with Monograph is that we have a lot of different clients, lots and lots of different clients. What you see right now is actually a screenshot from Tumblr. And so the idea is that we can actually inject Monograph into a Tumblr page using CardStack, which you may or may not have remembered from Wicked Good Ember. What you see here is our canonical user interface, where you can actually register your Monograph works and then share it into your different social platforms, as well as set various licensing for your works. What you see here is an example of our TV app. So we have the ability to actually create TV channels, basically apps like you perhaps have seen on Apple TV, where you can basically pair your TV with your Monograph collection and then actually play that on the TV. We also have an iOS app, which actually Luke here is working on at this very moment. These are just wireframes right here. But yeah, this is something that is actually being created as we speak. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the technology. Now, you guys totally understand what Monograph is, right? Okay, let's talk about technology. So So Ember is actually an important part of Monograph, but it's probably, I would say it's not the only part of Monograph. And it's actually maybe, you could even say it's like I don't want to say it's a minor part of Monograph, but there's a lot of other things going on here. So so we're using Ember. We're using Node.js with Express. We're using SQLize ORM with Postgres. Something that's very esoteric here is that we're using Bitcoin D. So anyone that's done any kind of blockchain development is probably familiar with Bitcoin D. Bitcoin D is the actual peer on the peer-to-peer network for blockchain. We're using Redis for caching, and that's as well as doing a lot of various scheduling for queues for worker threads. And Heroku's not really a technology, it's more of a platform, but I didn't really have a slide to jam it in there. So, but yeah, we're on Heroku as well. And okay, so I want to mention some of the interesting things going on in terms of like integrations. CardStack. So you probably noticed or remember this from Wicked Good Ember. CardStack is actually a means by which we can inject Ember applications into foreign web pages like Tumblr, for example. We're using Cloudinary for doing media transformations. We're using Pusher for doing async notifications, basically establishing WebSocket channels so we can actually push notifications to clients. And as you saw before, we have a lot of different clients. File Picker, we're using File Picker for uploading our media. Stripe for taking money from people's credit cards. We're using Tori, which is a really fascinating add-on for managing sessions and also for doing OAuth. And another really cool part of our application is we're using Ember Deploy for deploying to Heroku. So one thing I want to take a little moment here to talk a little bit about this. Many of you probably have started out with building applications and, oh yeah, I'm just building a JavaScript application. I just need to serve static files. I'll just put it into S3. And if any of you have done this, you've probably realized, well, yeah, if you've hit the reload button on your app after you put in S3, your app completely breaks. And that's because S3 is not actually a web server. It's just a cache. And so one of the things that we've done is, yeah, we started out using S3 just because we had to get something out there quick. But now we're ready to grow up. And so as part of that, hitting the reload button should not break our app. And so that's when we started, okay, so let's put a web server in front of this. And so what we're actually doing is we're just using our own API server, which is being hosted out of Heroku. And then we're using Redis to actually serve up that or maintain that index.html. So this is a really interesting pattern for you folks that are actually using S3 right now and have noticed that hitting reload breaks. Yeah, there are hacks that you can do in order to like recognize that a 404 should get redirected to like a hash, but it's really a hack. So yeah. Anywho, so Matt had asked us to answer a bunch of questions about our particular project or like what's going on, and so we had to talk about a challenge that we've had. And our way around it. So I had mentioned a little bit about the S3 thing, but I think what's more interesting in terms of challenges that we've had, I think there's a couple notable ones. One of them is around doing OAuth. And so when most people do OAuth, they say, oh yeah, we're just an OAuth consumer. We're going to OAuth with like Twitter or OAuth with Facebook. We had a challenge where we actually had to be an OAuth provider. So we were actually the source of the authentication. And in doing that, that part was in and of itself very hard. And then now after building out the OAuth provider stuff, we had to, okay, now how do we become an OAuth consumer? Because we were actually an OAuth consumer of our own provider, through a different application. Tori was amazing. So like if anyone out there needs to do OAuth or you just need to do session management, take a look at Tori. It's really quite fascinating and a really easy way to actually doing authentication as well as managing sessions. Another thing that's actually something that's becoming more important for us right now is around asynchronous notification or push notification. And so we've been doing a lot of stuff around Pusher, and it seems that almost every problem we have these days, the solution is ultimately to use Pusher. And a lot of it is as well the application's not responding fast enough, or I want to get a more native feel to my application. So one of our colleagues was actually mentioning today, like, it almost feels like Pusher is becoming like the nervous system of our application, of our platform. And it kind of is, and I think that kind of reflects a trend in that a lot of applications these days are becoming, web applications are becoming more native in feel, in that they're actually responding to things that are not necessarily, events that are not actually driven by the user. They're events that are actually happening by other users or by various system things. But the idea here is that you can use a platform like Pusher to actually establish WebSockets and subscribe to channels. And it's a really great way of, of having asynchronous notification in your application. We use Pusher all over the place, and I have to admit it's really simple and it's easy. I give it a 2 thumbs up. Okay, reflect on your code base from a year or 2 ago. We are a company that has existed for like, what, 4 months? So, undefined. In the future, okay, so I guess, going forward, I think one of the big things for us right now is getting on to Ember 2.0. Robert Jackson has been working with us tirelessly for the past week, I think, before he moves on to his next thing, which someone will be talking about later. In getting us to Ember 2.0, I think one of the big challenges, if I were to speak for Rob in terms of actually doing that, are dealing with deprecations, and not necessarily deprecations in our application, but deprecations in add-ons that we're using. So I think that is a big challenge for us. And if we want to get to Ember 2.0, we have to deal with all the add-ons that we're using and make sure not only our application is deprecation-free, but our add-ons are deprecation-free. So that's a bit of a challenge. But that's kind of where we're going. And yeah, I guess that kind of summarizes what I wanted to say. Thanks, everyone.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, man. So again, we're going to go through 3 intro speakers, and then at the end, if you guys try and keep a question in your mind, go ahead and write it down, and we'll bring everyone back up here, and they can share a mic and pass it around, because they should have some similar experiences. Next up is Mars. Mars works at a company called Fuse Machines. They do customer service automation and a lot of machine intelligence work, so I'm sure they'll have some interesting stuff to show us right here. Cool. Give them a round of applause.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, so I didn't prepare anything because they told me to present like yesterday. So I'm just going to talk about like what we do and how we use Ember and what it helped, like what kind of benefit we got from Ember. So a Fuse machine, yeah, we built a customer service automation platform, and like it's like most of the tools we build are like internal to the customer service representatives to use. We also provide like a widget that acts as if it's like a live chat, except you are interacting with our system. Like you ask a question and then it provides you with an answer. Like an answer that's kind of accurate. And then if you're not satisfied, then that's how you have an option to ask a customer service representative of the company that you want the service from. So so let me go back to, let me see what we have here. Yeah, how is Ember helping us? Basically, the big benefit we have from Ember is the structure it gives when writing the code, because we have an offshore team of about 20 engineers in Nepal. So like if say I create something and then I want those engineers to add to it, if I was to create my own structure, it will take more time to read through it and then understand it. But with Ember, you know where everything is. So that's the first thing. The other thing is mostly Ember data, because we act as a search engine for our clients. And we're using like heavy machine learning and natural language processing. Most of the things we do is mostly like filtering data, fetching and filtering. And Ember data helps us. It helps us a lot, even though there are still things that that they need to improve. Yeah. So yeah. So also other thing, something else I missed was the stack that we use. Backend is like mainly Java, like Spring Framework. So for the challenges that we have, the same way I said, it's like we rely heavily on Ember data. And like the interface between Spring Framework and Ember data is not really clear. And one of the challenges we have is to find a seamless way to connect instead of writing adapters for each model that we create. The other thing is for the sorry. Yeah. So we have this. Thank you. The other challenge that we have is the heavy loading. The heavy loading of like the Ember, the whole Ember.js file. No, the application and so on is start. So it takes a long time, and is like since we have like the tools we create mostly for the internal for the clients are like mostly like they have a lot of components, and when you load all those components at once, it takes a long time to load, and we have like clients globally, and there's like say a person from India. From what we saw in Amazon's the tools that they use to monitor the time was like probably like more than a minute, and that's like something that you can't really like as a client you can't really. There's no way you can like use a service like a website that takes like more than a minute to load. So one thing I would suggest, I don't know if it's possible, is to be able to side load some piece of the code, the JavaScript code. And I saw in like the keynote, the 2015 keynotes, that there's like a new thing called Fastboot, which may be better, but so we'll see. I don't know. And yeah, I guess that's. I have one last point. So the future, where we're heading, or what we want to see in the future of Ember is mostly Ember data. Yeah, it's done. It's fine. Mostly Ember data. If we can, like, I don't know if you guys work with the Ember data guys, but like in terms of fuse machines, we rely heavily on like filtering, searching data as fast as we can. So that's mostly the part that we want to see improvements. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Mars. That was awesome. And Chaz is our next speaker. Chaz is co-founder of a company called Appable down in Dumbo, and they do HIPAA-compliant hosting and services for your startup or technology stack. And it's basically Heroku. It's just Heroku. It's got a better logo. Oh, great. Give him a round of applause.
Hey everybody, my name's Chaz. I'll preface this by saying they sent me here as the token emissary. I'm the CEO and a lawyer. And so I'm going to tell you why we're really, really excited to continue working with Ember and why our devs love it. So I'm speaking on behalf of some of my devs. We make a deployment platform. It's a lot, think of it like Heroku. It's kind of a secure, isolated Heroku with a bunch of compliance hooks to help with HIPAA compliance. But we have a dashboard. So when you go in, you have basic apps, databases, log drains, and a bunch of things to play with. And it's really, really fast now. It's so much fun now that it's in Ember. It's fantastic. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we built it, and two things. I'm going to focus on two things. Number one is tooling, and number two is deployment. So all of our APIs, we have 3 core APIs. We have a services API, an auth API, and a compliance API, and they're all HAL APIs. So they're all, is it HAL? A couple of people? Okay, so HAL is JSON with embedded links, basically. So you get JSON, and you get normal JSON payloads up here, but then you also get links, which are references, and these are actually followable. So you can, as a human, you can follow these. As a machine, you can follow these. So you can navigate your data model across APIs using links. So these don't have to be just within the current API. They can be cross API too. So that's awesome, but that is that's a challenge sometimes for tooling. So Matt and Corey put together Ember Data HAL 9000, which is an Ember Data adapter for HAL. And how long? A couple days? This was 3 days. Yeah, this is fast. This is an unbelievable amount of value to add in 3 days, where all of a sudden now all of our devs have an easy interface. I encourage you to check this out too. And if anybody wants to know about HAL APIs. So in 3 days, the entire Ember community can parse HAL APIs like that, and it's absolutely fantastic. And that's not just, I'm not just talking about HAL. So this is one of our front-end devs. He's a Ruby guy and has done some single-page stuff too. And his experience, Dashboard was his first experience with Ember, and he was just blown away. And this is his comment was just, it's so incredibly easy to add tooling to these apps. And so it's easy to pull tooling in, and it's easy to write your own. I pulled out the slide here, but we use a shared Ember component for increasingly all of our front-end apps. So we're so happy with Ember for the dashboard, which is the operational part. We're rewriting all of our front-end apps in Ember as we go. So the other thing I wanted to talk about or to just share with you is what we're doing with regards to deployment. And I heard some comments about this earlier. So we love continuous deployment. Continuous deployment is great because depending on your deployment strategy, the code that is committed should be the code that's live. So you can diff it, you can compare branches, you can use all of your git foo to examine what should be going on in staging, in production. So this is our setup. We like to, every time we merge to master, we do a deploy to staging, and every time we merge to a release, we deploy to production. And so, what is it? The rest is left as an exercise. It's fun. So we use a bunch of these tools that you guys all use. We use Ember CLI deploy. We also use Ember deploy S3. So S3 is tricky, right? So it's fast. It's awesome. You can put CloudFront in front of it. It's incredible. But URLs are a pain in the butt. So there are a couple add-ons for this too. Again, we love the extensibility and the tooling. So we took a look at Ember deploy S3 index. So normally with Ember deploy S3, you're talking about writing the files that you need, putting them on S3 and delivering them. And hosting on S3 is, again, tricky. So we're talking about, this is about hosting on S3. This was a little too beefy for us, so we stripped it down. And we ended up just using the redirects. Did you guys get into this? Did you guys use so you can set up S3 routing rules too. And what we do here, this is essentially what we're doing up here. This is just the documentation from deploy S3 index. But what we're doing here is we're taking everything after a host name, stripping it out, replacing, adding a hash fragment, and then sending it back to the app. And so this is what it looks like. If you go, I'm showing you a 404 here. So if you go to our dashboard and you start at the momentum screen, you enter something that doesn't compute, you see the hash fragment appears. That's the S3 redirect rule, adding a hash fragment in, passing it to the app, and then the app is rewriting the URL out. And the 404 that you see is being delivered from the app. That's the Ember app, giving you the 404. So the dashboard itself and everything we do is open source. You can go to, it's just Appable /dashboard.appable.com, and you can browse it. Matt and Corey did some huge heavy lifting on this, and so we are very, very excited to hold it out as like a very lean, very mean, very well done Ember app, and I encourage you to grok it, learn from it, and enjoy it. So thank you again.
So Hassan and Mars, can I ask you guys to come back up here for a moment and answer any questions and such that we're going to have? Or you can sit there and I can hand you the mic. It's your call, I suppose.
What I'd like to, I think what we should
Yeah.
do is have the three speakers just right up here in the middle, standing if you don't mind, so that we can get a nice shot for our friends in Austin.
Where's Austin?
Austin, Texas.
No, I know where. Sorry, that was too meta. It's Al Gore invented a series of tubes.
Yeah, so comments, questions?
You showed earlier that your hypermedia representation using HAL, and you said that the links could actually be embedded somewhere else, the follow links within HAL, or within your hypermedia. When I was dealing with the same thing and trying to link to other sources, what do you do in order to like do session hijacking? So you have HIPAA compliance and you have a link that goes to site B, then how do you handle the fact that they might need some sort of auth, or do you just totally let them deal with it?
You don't serve anything. You serve a reference to a resource, right? Am I understanding the question?
Oh, so you're just saying whatever, if they have any auth-related stuff?
You still have to authenticate at the remote API. So the other API,
Yes.
when you make the request, you still have to authenticate at that API.
Oh, that's their personal problem. Okay.
Yeah, and you still have to deal with, so if you have like a session, right, and you need to still, the HAL doesn't help you deal with that. HAL just tells you where to go, not how to get there.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
So I actually have a question.
Is this on? This one is.
Can you hear me? Okay. So can you explain the difference between HAL and JSON API?
No.
What I noticed is that HAL seems really similar to JSON API, and I'm wondering why you'd want to use HAL over JSON API, since JSON API is going to be the reference API for Ember data going forward.
Yeah, that's a good question, and the man to answer it is unfortunately not me. It's my CTO. So
Yeah,
sorry.
I can at least speak to the difference in between them. Howl is far more. So Howl is older, for one. It's been around for a lot longer as a standard, and it does not include information. It does not prescribe anything for changing information on the server. It only tells you how to read information from the server. So one of the ways that they were able to ship a standard like 2.5 years ago or something like that was by punting on all the hard questions that JSON API tries to handle. So I think that's that would be probably the main reason why they chose it, is that when they were building out their APIs a year ago or a year and a half ago, if you looked around and said, what is the stable thing? Well, Howl was like a real standard at that time, and JSON API wasn't mature yet. They're not necessarily mutually exclusive, though. I'm not sure if they are or they aren't, but they're very similar. So.
Yeah, I can't answer this question. So we built this about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And we spec'd out the APIs about 2 years ago. So at the time, if that was the case, and I vaguely remember a conversation that JSON API just wasn't ready.
Sure.
Any other questions, or one over here?
So I guess for me, like having learned Ember a long time ago, I wanted to just ask a question on around the learning curve. Obviously, in the last 6 months, how did you find picking up the Ember APIs and how to build something powerful really quickly? What was the learning like?
I'm a terrible person to ask this question because I've been doing it for a while. Maybe.
Okay.
Battery's dead, sorry.
So when I started with Ember, I actually didn't know anything about it. The company hired me, and they were like, "You're going to take this book, run it, and then build our tool." So I knew JavaScript, which was a huge plus. And people complain all the time about Ember documentation because it's not really clear. But when you use the new tool Ember CLI, it helps because it gives you the structure. You don't have to create the structure by yourself, and that helped a lot. So I don't know exactly why you want to know. Yeah. So if you've done any of the MVC framework, if you know any of the MVC frameworks, Ember will be easy to learn and write code fast. So.
Cool. Great.
So I can just say one thing. We have a dev who came in with, again, no Ember background, a solid Rails background, no Ember background, basically paired with Matt and Corey for 3 months or less, and is now writing production-ready Ember apps on his own. Like, we're delivering Ember apps in production when he's the lead on it. So in 3 months, I understand like 2 years ago, there was a significant learning curve, but the documentation, the tooling, the support, the community is to the point where you can be delivering production quality code with no experience and some good, a good community and good mentors in a couple months. So it's incredible.
Question for the panelists from Austin. I'm curious if the speakers are all on Ember CLI or using Ember without Ember CLI.
CLI. Yeah.
So all Ember CLI. And then I have a question for Hassan. I know the answer to this, but I'm just curious. Maybe I think it would be interesting. You showed a kind of a TV app, a mobile app, the Tumblr thing. How do you organize all this stuff? Is this one app, or just tell us about that real quick?
Yeah. So that's a great question. One of our big challenges is that we have a lot of, like I said, we have a lot of different clients, and we're trying to share as much as we can. We're trying to be as DIY as possible. So we actually have a GitHub project that we call Common. And the idea is that we have this as an NPM dependency or for all of our other projects as an Ember add-on. So that's actually another interesting strategy. In the case you have a lot of different projects or clients or what have you, and you want to share code, you can actually use the Ember add-on infrastructure to allow that to happen. And it's actually pretty amazing. So the idea is that we can actually write code in this one place, and it changes in all of our applications.
Yeah, +1 for that. Like we did the same thing, and it's awesome. So.
All right. Well, great. We're gonna.
I can add to what I said. For Fuse machines too, they are like some parts are written pure JavaScript, and in order to load that part in Ember, we use the Ember components, which works really well. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, excellent. Thanks to the three of you. And we're going to take about just a quick 5 minutes for a break for everyone to stand up. And then we're going to come back with a round of people who have been using Ember for a little bit under 2 years.
If anybody needs the facilities, there's a men's room over here and a ladies' room in the back.
feel like I'm back in high school. There's a
feel
button.
I'm back in my undercover jeans.
There's a button on it if you want to turn it off.
Okay. Hello? Yeah. Hello? Hello? It's not taking. Hello? 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 Hello?
Maybe closer to your face?
Yeah, can you? Hello? Hello? That's good?
Perfect.
Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father? Okay, good.
All right, we're going to get started in just about like 20 seconds here. If people can find their seats, that'd be great. Got like no one right here. What is up with that? Got like no one right here. All right, so we're going to kick off our next round of people, and so the first group of folks that we had up here had worked with Ember for underneath a year, so they were pretty new to it. This second batch of people are people who have probably worked on smaller apps before, and they're working on a bigger app. They've had to grow it through some length of time, and they've seen some other changes like the Ember community in the process, probably notably around the build tools. So our first speaker is going to be Michael Madrid, and he is an employee at Plife, which is a friend of the Meetup, we might say, a friend of the Meetup Plife. And he's going to have some great stuff for what Plife is up to these days. So give him a round of applause.
Okay, thank you, everybody. As Matt said, I work for a company called Plife. What we do is we run a platform which allows people to create rich interactive experiences. Now, what are experiences? They are, we also refer to these as cards, but basically they are ad units, kind of unobtrusive but engaging ad units. Things like Swipe, it's a Tindery type of experience, trivia, polls, personality quiz, what type of Game of Thrones character are you? Some very image-oriented, like Carousel. What would this look like? This is something we have hosted. You have something, Trivia Coed, that's a website, put up a simple sweep and what percentage of blah, 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 you answer this, and great. Oh, what's going on here? So usually this would be something a little, not hosted, but something more part of a website page that a publisher would put up. Something like this, for instance. You can't even really tell it's something different. It's part of the web page. Which following best describes your main focus of area? Whatever, sales, mobile. And this gives you some sort of personality type, which is suitable, very good for advertising. IBM did a campaign with this, which they're going to be expanding to 6 countries around the world. What type of cloud computing user are you? Okay, so can lead directly to the sort of engagement you want. Okay. Another thing you can do with these, and one thing I should mention, all of these cards or widgets as we also call them, they are all Ember apps which are running out of an iframe. Another thing you can do, very easy to put these things on social media. Here is a Twitter feed where Hassan has promised to help me out with this. Because we are working with a customer in Abu Dhabi. We just say we work for Abu Dhabi. So this is probably I want to say poll or something. So anyway, and very, very easy to share to all your social media. One final note. Oh, so a little about the tool. This is the builder tool we use to build cards. This is a already half-built card about Ember. Question, how long have you been using Ember? What version? We'll just really quickly add a question, which is, what's your favorite new Ember feature? And we'll just say HTML bars or whatever, Glimmer. It's all you have to do. And then it's very easy to look and see what's going on. Boom, boom. And there's our question, which we just added. So just one quick side shameless plug. We are on Product Hunt today. We actually just did a release. You can sign up for our product. We are currently at number 11. And I'd be very happy if we got to number 10 by the end of the night. So. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be in this room. Anyone watching the live stream, you can do this too. Okay, so now enough sales and more of the Ember stuff. I've been using Ember a little longer than a couple of years, but we started using Ember about a year ago, just about a year ago. We were on 1.5. We got a huge jump start from a small Ember consultancy. You guys may have heard of, what's it called? Yap Labs. Oh yes, Yap Labs. Luke here was instrumental in that, so that really helped out. Now, as you saw, we have a bunch of experiences, about 10 different cards. So one of the things is, so we don't strangle ourselves, trying to manage the complexity. There's a lot of communality, and we want to be able to extract that. At the same time, we want to be able to vary things among cards. So two of the things which really helped were Ember add-ons, and also polymorphism in both the Ember data level and Ember JSON API level. Anybody going to call me on that? We're talking Ember 1.5 here. Okay, so no add-ons, and there was some support in Ember data, but not really enough. Luckily, we had Yap to help us on those things. They were able to do some custom things, which tided us over. And I'm very glad to say that as we have upgraded, Luke and I did an upgrade, I think, to 1.9. A little painful, but not like previous, like pre-1.0 upgrades where basically you threw away your whole system, or same with Ember CLI. Took us about a week, but I think we got rid of all of the, well, we were able to do real add-ons, which is really helped. I did our upgrade to 1.11, and we still have a little of the polymorphic code, but about half of it disappeared. And I'm hoping that, with the Ember 1.0 release, that a lot of that will go away soon too. Okay, so getting rid of some things for the future for us. More flexible cards. Currently, we have experiences like you have a video poll or a poll where you just have poll questions, or you just watch a video and then poll questions. It'd be nice if you could have a poll question and a trivia question and maybe something completely different like Hangman or whatever. So trying to adopt a more flexible structure is something probably big for us. And once again, Ember has these sort of object-oriented features, features in the object-oriented tradition, which I think will help us a lot. One other thing for us going the future, our cards are very structured kind of experiences. They're not like a builder tool, for instance, where you could go to like 20 different pages. There is a very structured flow to things. You're not going to go straight from the beginning straight to the end. You're going to have activities. Activities are going to go to separate activities until you're completed. This sounds a lot like pre-router in Ember. I mean, this is state machine type stuff. So maybe down the line, this is kind of a nightmare for us right now, something we really would like to clean up. Ember still has state managers, but it's gotten very little love recently. And I think we probably might want to have something more declarative, so some sort of little language where we can do this just declaratively, saying, okay, this experience goes so. But that's something we'll have to really think about and do for the future. Pain points. I think Ember has put a lot of work into build tools and also testing. Build tools is getting a lot better, but still has some rough edges. Testing has a lot of rough edges and I think we're probably better than a lot of communities, but between Testum, Phantom, Chrome, Travis, there are 4 or 5 places when things can go wrong, and sometimes things will work very nicely locally, and then Travis will just throw errors. I think kind of as, first Ember CLI, we built a lot of stuff with Broccoli, and then kind of it's going more native. Hopefully we can maybe do some sort of stuff with that with Testum and Phantom. And I suspect also there is more on the framework side, just on top of QUnit, which could be done to just, make this more of a framework and easier type experience. Oh, mocking is another area too, where I think there needs to be a little more. So that is something which hopefully we can see more in the future. And with that pretty much is what I would like to say.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
In time?
You're still hooked up. You're still talking. Everyone can hear you. Hold on just one sec, sorry. There you go. Other side on the air.
Can you hear me?
Excellent. Okay, so our next speaker is Konstantin. Konstantin is here from Blue Apron. I see their boxes all over the city of New York.
I know.
I expect you do too. So yeah, give him a round of applause and we'll see what's happening at Blue Apron.
All right. So I'm from Blue Apron. I have 7 slides and 5 minutes, so better make this quick. Who are we? Well, we are basically a food subscription company. We now have around 2,000 employees, although our engineering team is only 20. Our architecture right now, we have 3 primary Ember apps. We have blueapron.com, the administrative operations tools app. We have a warehouse management system that's all built in Ember. There's 2 Ember apps, one for the desktop and one for the mobile. And we also have a backbone app secretly hidden in there. One interesting challenge of many. I think some of the biggest problems that I have run into personally is testing. And that includes testing the Rails API, unit requests. We use Cucumber, unit testing in Ember, and Ember acceptance testing. And one of the biggest problems we've been having is actually trying to test a full stack kind of integration test. And what do I mean by that? Meaning like we have a Rails app running, we have an Ember app running, and there's no mocking. We don't use Pretender. We don't use any kind of like mock jacks or anything. This Ember app will actually hit a real Rails app to make sure that if say someone deletes some attribute in our JSON, we'll know that the app was actually broken. Let's see, what other notes did I have here? Yeah, testing is hard. No one wants to do it. Sometimes it's hard to force people to do it. So our old architecture. BlueApron.com is still in our old architecture, which is Ember Rails, CoffeeScript, Emblem, Teaspoon, one big app. We deploy it as part of our Rails app. That is running, I believe, Ember 1.3, somewhere around there. But our warehouse system is now in the new architecture, which is Ember CLI, KeyUnit, and we're running Ember 1.9.1. And obviously we split it up into 2 smaller apps. The future, things that I want. So we have a very interesting problem in the warehouse where our Ember app runs on these iPhones, and it quickly becomes a problem when Ember data slowly fills up memory, and these iPhones obviously don't have that much memory. So as the app gets used throughout the day, we slowly get very, very slow downs in our apps, or even app crashes. So one requested feature that I've been thinking to solve this is a simple LRU. Another big issue, since we're moving around in a warehouse, Wi-Fi is obviously always constantly dropping, and we need to be able to somehow reliably save and sync this data seamlessly in the event that the connection drops, and I basically can't stop doing my work as a warehouse employee. Error reporting. Error reporting, not in terms of there was an exception, but more in terms of there was an exception and what is the state of my app? Like, what is an Ember data? What happened? Why am I in this state that has somehow broken? Another interesting kind of feature that we've been thinking about, I know you guys have been mentioning using Pusher, but all these warehouse employees are in the same warehouse, so we were thinking of experimenting with WebRTC to basically communicate between these phones. Ember native, question mark. And of course, isomorphic Ember. No. So we are hiring, as everybody is, of course, and I would also like to save some time for a quick demo. If I can figure out how to airplay this. Reflector, airplay. The airplay gods are not showing me my machine here. Let's try this again. Reflector. Am I on the same pivotal guest? Reflector preferences. Let's try that one more time. Reflector. Airplay. I guess the demo gods are not being very nice. But I have this really cool device that we use in the warehouse right now. It's very similar to what you would see in the Apple Store. It's a QR code scanner, and it's a caddy that goes around an iPhone. And basically what happens is we can scan employees in, and we can scan pallets, and we need to keep track of inventory. So if I point my device at this QR code, that's me. I'll scan myself in, type in my secret passcode. And then let's say this is pallet AM. We can scan pallet AM. And it should show you information about pallet AM. Obviously there's some buggy features in here, but it was very interesting to interact with this service called Swipe Track is what these caddies are, basically. So that's it.
Great. Cool. Excellent. Yeah, super. So we're going to have one more person come up, and then we're going to bring everyone back up for questions.
I'm trying to get this reflector thing to work in the meantime.
Yeah, sure. We're going to need to show off. Live demos. Ooh. Okay, so our last speaker in this group is John Dayton. John works at a company called Vesterly, which is another, I think as you're seeing from a lot of these companies that have been working with Ember for a while, another company that's been at the Meetup a lot and you've probably heard from before. Vesterly makes investment products for investment advisors, and all the way up near Grand Central, and John's going to show us what they've been working on lately. So let's give him a howdy hello.
So Vesterly makes a content marketing platform, and primarily right now it's targeted at investment advisors, but really it's meant for anyone who has a high value service that they're trying to target at some high value customers. So these people have a hard time selling products because if you think about say a lawyer or an investment advisor, you want to be able to sell something that's am I cutting out? Okay. Sounds good. All right, good. You have a high value service that you want to sell, and you have specifically identified your potential clients, and you don't need to get millions of views. You just need to have the 1,000 or 2,000 people who you're targeting to be able to engage with you and then to give you referrals to other potential business. So what we've tried to accomplish is to create a highly customizable application that our publishers can go and create content. They can use some of our content. We provide different RSS feeds that they consume, or they can publish their own information and then have it consumed by their clients and potential clients. So how this works is that a publisher can come in, they can customize a feed of content. We have a lot of ways that they can do that, so they can search for different sources they would like to see, so they can add an RSS feed. They can add certain tags which will then be taken by our learning algorithms to provide them better content. They can create a bunch of different feeds with different types of subjects that they can publish from, and they can automatically publish from those feeds. So it's highly, highly customizable to be able to provide different content for different clients of theirs. And they can come in, they can rearrange it, they can decide who they want to see it. They can, when someone actually comes into their website, they will have tagged them to be able to see certain content. So if I come in, I will see a set of content that's been specifically customized for me based on my interests and what my investment advisor thinks that I would like to see. We also provide a lot of customization around colors and logos and all that kind of thing of the site. They can also create customized emails that will have different stories in different sections depending on who you are. And then we provide a fair amount of reader tracking that shows the publisher who's been coming into their site during certain time periods. They can look at, they can slice it however they want and see who's been interacting with their site, how they've been sharing it, how people have signed up, and what content has been most effective for them. So I just, when Matt asked me to speak tonight, I started reminiscing because next month is actually the 2-year anniversary of my first Ember meetup. So I feel like Ember's come a long way, and I wanted to talk a little bit about our stack and some of the things that we like and some of the things we're looking forward to, but also sort of reminisce about some of the things that have been difficult in the past that I think that we're looking to, that have become easier and that we think will become even easier, which is great. So, okay, so we're on Ember 1.8 right now. We're in Ember Data Beta 11. And I put in parentheses that we're a couple of failing tests away from migrating to 1.9 and Beta 12. So pretty excited about that. Because our app is highly customizable, we actually build a different app for each publisher, and we serve different HTML for each publisher. And some of that HTML shares assets, and those assets are served directly from S3, but for the HTML and for their customizable CSS, those are served from Rails via Redis. And so we're running on MongoDB, and then we have some Python for some of our prediction algorithms. We use Ember CLI and Broccoli, which is a huge improvement from the way it used to be. We're also really excited about Appable, and we've been excitedly converting all of our CoffeeScript to ES6. So that's been pretty exciting. Tori, which we have supported in the past, we love it. We use it quite extensively in our app. And then just some documentation and just some additional add-ons that we really like that have made things a lot easier for us. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about, over the last couple of years, what I've seen has been difficult about onboarding people to Ember. And some of these things have improved, so they're not all meant to be sort of a state of the state right now. But these are kind of the things that I've seen have been the most difficulty in trying to get people to come up to terms with getting Ember up and running. One of them is just build hell, and this is especially pre-Broccoli, pre-Ember CLI. Just trying to get a version of Ember up and running was very difficult in the past. This has been almost completely fixed by Ember CLI and Broccoli. But I think that has been one of the greatest advancements in Ember over the last year, is just the amount of time that it takes someone who's new to Ember to just get an app up and running. There are a few things that I think are kind of confusing, especially when you're first coming to Ember, trying to figure out when do I use components, views, item controllers, partial render, view, component. There's a lot of different ways to render similar things and to create similar functionality, and very often people who aren't kind of aware of the workings of Ember come in and they start building and they get really excited about things, but they may start building things in ways that aren't performant, or that this kind of goes down the list, which is that they start adding things that are creating too many observers, and then you have slowdowns or things start crashing. And then just last of all, hey, where did my action go? You know, I wrote an action here. It seems to have disappeared. Where's that going? So that's just one of the things that I've seen. Some of the things that we're excited about and why we're trying to upgrade it as fast as we can. One is just faster rendering. Glimmer is fantastic, and we're really excited to be able to get up and running with that in our application. Just a lot of the support for lazy loading data and assets. We do a lot of this kind of on our own now, but we're excited about the more native ways of doing it. I think Mike talked a little bit about just the data relationships in Ember data have gotten a lot better, and they're getting better all the time. And just components, just componentizing everything. It seems like a very natural architecture for everything. So, thank you.
Can I ask our presenters to come back up? We have John and Michael. Yeah, Constantine, sorry. Constantine, Michael. Yeah. Questions, thoughts?
Yeah, my name's Mike. You were mentioning earlier about acceptance testing, and one thing that I liked is that you had like quotes around it and air quotes. And this isn't just an Ember thing, but in any ecosystem, whether it's Rails or .NET that I've worked in, when it comes to acceptance tests, it's like the conundrum usually comes from, or the rub lies in where you try to create a user, or say you're trying to do something with your Blue Apron, right? But you need to be a user and you're logged in. How do you manage the fact where tests are supposed to start off with a completely clean database, but you have to like reach behind that API wall to delete the user so you can start? So no matter what ecosystem I've worked in, I always put air quotes around acceptance tests, because you can't ever like once you use a user and you're done with them and you log in with them, how do you get rid of them without poking behind that wall?
So that is my secret sauce project that I'm working on right now, actually. So the idea behind this is right now, obviously spinning up a Rails app is easy. Spinning up your Ember app is easy, and Ember already is leveraging Express. So what I do is I actually have Express middleware that I capture routes such as like test reset database, or like test setup scenario, or like test build factory. And that is actually captured by the Express server, and it never goes to the Rails server. And then I can, with Express, I have access to the file system. I have access to load anything I want. I can connect to my MySQL or Postgres database, and I can do a lot of the test setup and cleanup in between my tests. And I don't have to pollute my Rails app with like if test mode, do not expose, truncate entire database, and I don't have to expose anything in my Ember app to kind of like help with that issue. So it's a work in progress. It's mostly working. I think.
So you mean actually testing on production stuff, or?
The issue is like the acceptance test is supposed to be black box test, right? So how do you deal with the situation where you have to have a user, and then you probably want to get rid of that user or whatever that they created, almost like how in Rails you have the same password, right?
Yeah, so we're moving toward, we're sort of in the experimental stages, so I can't speak to reality. I mean, it sounds like you're a little bit closer, but we're moving our acceptance testing to we're having them written by our business team, because that's really kind of where the acceptance testing. So we're using Cucumber, and we're planning. So those are running. The plan is to take spin up an instance of Rails in Circle CI. We run our tests through Circle CI. So spin up an instance of Rails and seed a database, and then start running the acceptance tests so that we can get a full stack look. But that's going to take a little bit of time to get up and running. That's the planned architecture.
Any other questions, please, guys?
Those of you who have experience running Ember apps on mobile, well, for mobile devices, have you ever had the issue of the app getting too big and affecting performance?
Absolutely. Actually, every day, a lot of warehouse employees, the app basically crashes because Ember data collects this local cache and just it keeps collecting more and more and more and more of this data as they scan more and more pallets or as they scan more employees, and eventually it just crashes. So right now our strategy is pretty manual. Just kind of unload all in particular places, which isn't great. I mean, it works, so it makes the app doesn't crash. But eventually, like I said, I'd love to have like kind of like an LRU cache system where I know that there are objects that are old that I'm probably not going to use, and we can evict those objects instead of having to manually do a store.unload pallets, for instance.
So we play some tricks on our users a little bit to try to get around this a little bit, because part of it is that, especially on a mobile phone, it's really noticeable when you just have a white screen. It's not quite as noticeable on a desktop, but when you go somewhere and you have this, you can't tell that Ember's loading, and you just see a white screen. So we actually load in our HTML. We have this customized HTML for each publisher, and we actually load their header bar with their logo with the HTML. So as Ember's loading, it's kind of they at least have something to look at and know that the app is loading. But it's a very difficult problem to solve.
Yeah, I guess preloading is something we also do. We do that on the desktop as well as on mobile. And that pretty much gets us where we need to go. Unlike some of these other products where it really is the product, we have an ad where they're probably going to another page to look at something else. So, if the ad loads in a few seconds, that's perfectly acceptable. We don't have huge caches of data we have to worry about. And for our builder tool, which is really where we would have those issues, we just don't run that on mobile because we don't have to.
Excellent. Cool. Thanks to the three of you for presenting. We're going to go ahead and do another quick break here, stand up and walk around, and then we're going to dive in with our marathon runners and wrap up. Should be this. It'll go green. Yeah, give it a good press. It'll turn green. Yeah.
Hello?
Howdy. Okay, if everyone wants to find their way back to their seats, we're going to get started in just a few seconds here. What's your name, man? Snooks. Matthew. Nice to meet you. Yeah, pleasure. You're really diving in up here, aren't you? All right, we're going to be starting in just a moment. If you can find your way back to a seat, close up a conversation. All right, so we're going to start off our third round. So I think you guys saw that there were, it's already like the first two groups, you could already see some pretty obvious differences in the ways that the problems that they were solving and what they were approaching. The people in the second group seem to be solving, like they were dealing with mobile constraints and like all kinds of other, thinking about problems that were maybe a little bit more pushing the edge of the envelope. They had some more time to pick up more problems to solve. Another thing, a lot of them were wrestling with testing, and a lot of them talked about deployment concerns. So this is like the first, when you're getting your app running, those maybe don't come to light as the major things, but these are definitely things that people have noticed if they work on an app for a long time. So we're going to do our marathon runners is our last crew here, and Gaurav is going to kick us off. He's another friend of the Meetup, and he's going to talk about the company he's working with, HedgeServ, and how they're using Ember and what's going on there. So let's give him a round of applause.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Gaurav Manjal. I worked at Booker Software from June 2013 to July 2014. I worked at Red Owl Analytics for about 6 months after that. And now I'm working at HedgeServ since February. Now, HedgeServ itself has been using Ember for over 2 years, even longer than I've been using it even. And everywhere I've worked, I've been using Ember. So I've become more or less specialized in this endeavor. HedgeServ is a hedge fund administration company. So we don't actually have the money. We're a service company. So you're one of our clients. You're a hedge fund. You're a hedge fund company, and one of your hedge fund managers tells you we've got 100 shares of Apple, and of course you believe them. Well, you can't just do that. So we actually come in and do the due diligence. We check. We find out your manager really has 10,000 options in Apple, and they're all about to expire. That's a very different situation. So the architecture of our web platform is on the back end we use Python, .NET, Node.js. We use Redis, MongoDB, and MS SQL Server. And on the front end we use JavaScript and Ember. Now there is a legacy front end that was written in VB.NET, but we're moving away from that. This is just some screenshots because I don't really have time to give you a demo in 5 minutes. I've done a lot while just the few months I've been at HedgeServ. I've managed to help the company migrate from SVN to Git. In fact, we're completely using Git in our own team. I've instituted code reviews. I know that a lot of companies still don't do these things after all the software development best practices aren't followed everywhere, but we have begun doing this stuff since I've taken the helm. And I've helped migrate from our custom CI to a well-known continuous integration platform known as Jenkins. I've upgraded Ember from 1.6 to 1.8.1, and I've been migrating to Ember CLI over the past couple of months. I would say 5 months since my first attempt at doing so, and about 2 months into our current attempt, which is very different from our previous attempts. We are now doing it concurrently. So most of our developers are still developing new features and continuing to improve the platform, while I and one or two other people are working on converting our app to Ember CLI. And if anyone wants to know more about how we're doing this, please do feel free to contact me or talk to me. I could probably do a whole 30-minute talk about it if anyone's interested. We're actually doing a fork of Ember Table. So if you want to look it up online, it's at HedgeServ/Ember-table on GitHub. We're working on creating lazy loading infinite scroll. We're working on getting column and row grouping, column sorting, and aggregate functions into Ember Table. And this Ember Table has been a long, I would say, heavily used add-on throughout the community. And I think Taras did a talk about it maybe 5 or 6 meetups back. It's one of the best ways to make a table in Ember. One of the biggest issues with Ember Table is that because it's such a large library, and because Appable itself has a large system, they haven't been able to keep it up to date, just as we've had some real challenges keeping our very large 892 class app up to date with the latest Ember. So we're actually working on moving it into, we helped get it Ember Table into CLI, and we're now working to get it into more recent versions of Ember. And if you want to help us on our fork, you can certainly do so. We are hiring. We have a great Midtown location. We're also in Boston. We actually believe in paying people what they're worth, above market compensation. We're really growing very fast. We've got a high rate of growth. We're self-funded. We're making money, so we're actually paying people out of the money we make. You don't have to worry about investors running out on you. And we've got a lot of projects we want to start, and we just don't have the developers for. So please see me or email me at gmanjal@hedgeserv.com. And that's the end of my slides, but I'd like to also bring up that HedgeServ is really, really a great way of preventing things that like happened in 2008, because we're really important to the market that way. We found that accounting auditors aren't as quick as we are at actually spotting problems in the hedge fund industry. And we think we can, when you work for us, you could actually help prevent the next big crash. So think about that. And I'll give it to the next speaker.
Excellent. Thank you very much. You want to grab this? Right. Oh, of course. Sorry. Hand that. Give it to him a minute. All right. Do you want to use this guy? Cool. Our next speaker is Andre. Andre is a long-time employee at a company called Simple Reach, based here in New York, in this very neighborhood. And they have a fantastic platform and lots of interesting Ember challenges that they've been tackling for years now. So he's going to catch us up.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been working with Ember for over 2.5 years. So I didn't start with Ember at the start of Simple Reach starting with Ember. I started with Red Rover, working with Kevin at the back there, and moved to work. But it was about the same time that Ember started with, that Simple Reach started with Ember. So some of the very first hacker hours that we did in New York, so Simple Reach was hosting and Red Rover was hosting, and so we were kind of like solving the same problems together at the same time. Simple Reach, we do content measurement and distribution, kind of the tail end of what Jonathan does when publishers create content. We check and see what happens with it. So our main app is built in Ember. Any better? Is it the wrong one? More back here? Any luck? No. All right. I promise I will describe more than visualize to help you there in Austin. But yeah, so our app is pulling in a lot of numbers. It's doing a lot of kind of crazy visualizations that get to pull different pieces. We are kind of loading through a lot of data as it comes, kind of building through charts. It's like Hadrian's done a lot of presentations in the past on how we work with D3 to make a lot of this charting happen. A lot of reporting. Aside from that, we also build all of our internal tooling in Ember as well. So the way that our content analysts manage, who has access to which data, and kind of go through that using things like query params to make sure that works really nicely. To our deployment system. So again, all in Ember app. If I wanted to say, redeploy this testing server, I could do that, and then the rocket spins, and we are now deploying the server. All the way to, and we've shown this before as well, the way that we monitor how our code loads on publishers' pages. We have an Ember app that actually checks through and tests, tells us which tags they've loaded, lets us know how they've implemented our code on their site. So when I started with Ember and when SimpleReach started with Ember, it was pre-2, pre-1, or back then, one of the questions that I asked earlier was, what was the learning like for Ember? And so when I was learning Ember, Stack Overflow was like the thing that you had to be on all the time. I spent my day in Stack Overflow. That or the code base, right? You were in Stack Overflow or you were looking through the methods that you were trying to call, trying to find out which parts of the API. These days, I spend, I think, when I looked at Stack Overflow, it's like my last activity was like 30 days ago. Because I spend my time here now. It's all in the Ember API docs, all going through those pieces, some in the code, but mostly going through the API docs and then reading the code from there and checking the versions from there. The other kind of significant piece from that kind of early day, the pre-2 year ago days, was the old router. And my old CTO, Mike, did this presentation where the old router that we had for Ember had 282 lines of code. And when we upgraded to the new router that Mahdi is famous for, it went to 32 lines of code. So that incredible difference that we had from that one upgrade and that one kind of piece, and the amount of code that we were able to delete. And I think that's been the story for me from the get-go with Ember, is every kind of new piece that comes in has allowed me to delete code, which I think as a programmer is a really good feeling. The more code you can remove, the less bugs you will have. The next big kind of steps were having the inspector. We've taught all of our content analysts how to use the Ember CLI inspector. So if every of our clients ever report bugs, or if they see something funny, the first thing that they do before contacting us is look in the inspector and check how the data is looking, so they can figure out whether it's a data or a display problem. We're doing big data here. If things look wrong, if we decide that, well, maybe these social actions are incorrect, distinguishing between whether or not they came in incorrectly from our APIs and our kind of big data servers, or whether they came in incorrectly or they're being displayed incorrectly, is a big challenge for us. And having things like this, tools that our non-technical content analysts can use, has been a huge help. The next kind of step in our journey, I think, was having things like query params come through. So we could do crazy things like pass around links to different states of the app on the same page, and they would just work flawlessly. Again, thanks to Alex Machinier for pushing that through. A little help of Matt, I think. From there, going through that journey, the next big piece was Ember CLI. And this was thanks very much to Matt and Corey of 201 Created for helping us do that transition in a week. We kind of went from non-Ember CLI to Ember CLI. The other piece, I think, in this journey in New York, in working in Ember applications, has been the quality of the people around who are able to help you build things out. And it's funny, like the people who are presenting, saying in their first 4 months, many of them have worked with consultants in New York to help to build things out, like Yap Labs, like 201 Created. And the stories coming out of that are stories of success, and this was awesome. Versus if anybody has experience past of working with a lot of consultancies, that's not necessarily the story. So I think it speaks to the quality of what we're able to work with and the people, I think, in the community that we've been able to work with that have made building these apps so much fun and it's feeling empowering because you can really lean on the amount of expertise there is in this community. So once we had Ember CLI, this kind of, again, this transition, this inflection point happened for us as a company and what we were able to build. We were able to use add-ons. So Simple Auth was one that we were able to use. We were able to use the Moment add-on. We can kind of go through these. Liquid Fire we were able to use. Ember CLI Deploy, Ember Watson, Ember Wormhole, Ember Modal Dialog. All of these pieces, these are like code that we either A, didn't have to write, or again, got to delete, which meant that we didn't have to think about it, we didn't have to write tests for, we didn't have to maintain, we didn't have to really deal with in our day-to-day, and we could really think of the new things that we could write, which has been a phenomenal boost for our team. And especially as we onboard new people, they don't have to worry about this huge app. They're just worried about these small add-ons and pulling them in. And then we got to write our own add-ons. So one of the conversations earlier was around acceptance testing. So again, if you look at, this, where's this one here? So this page here has an incredible number of numbers on the screen. So you have all these numbers here. You have these numbers here broken down in this chart. You have this chart, which I can break down by different pieces. You have predictive chart. You have this chart. You have the number of social actions. And then I can filter them by, say, mobile. And those ones which could be filtered have changed here. So every number you see multiplied by 4, that's the number of different elements for just this content item that we have to show. Then if you think to the screen here with multiple content items, and we have reports. And so just the sheer number of pieces, using any kind of factories or using any kind of fake data, just wasn't going to work for us to do acceptance testing. So we came up with Betamax, which is simply allows us to record queries to our server. So we run everything with the seed data, and then we can run our acceptance tests, which take up to 45 minutes when we run them against the servers. But then we can run them kind of with the recordings in place and the Betamax in place, and everything runs, and then the tests complete in about 5 minutes. So down from that 45 minutes. So you can see it's kind of doing these queries live, all using Betamax, and we were able to build that, release that, and work with other developers on that, and have that add-on be kind of live in the background. Next piece was deployment. So we have this really cool deployment thing that we built in Ember for all of our Chef deploys. We deploy all of our other big systems in Chef, and we used to deploy our Ember code that way too. It would go into the Rails app, the Rails asset compiler would compile it and do all its thing, and that would take forever, and we'd want to get a patch out, and we'd be waiting for Rails. Thanks to these amazing people here, CLI deploy came through and helped us really kind of redo that, and kind of using some of their techniques, we were able to build out systems where I can see my current production version that's live there. If I wanted people to test different versions of the app, I can choose whether I want to look at the tags, the branches. This is like my upgrade 1.3 branch. I can choose which version of the backend APIs I want to push against it. And as you notice, all it's doing is building these query params on the back of this piece. And so I can go to that, and this shows you my 1.13 branch, which obviously still has a bunch of deprecation warnings to get through. But just to be able to go through that, pass that URL around to different people. One of the fun things that we were able to do with this is if we discovered visual bugs, which is incredibly difficult to trace back through, we could just load up all the different versions in a row and quickly find which one had the visual bug introduced. And we could kind of find the exact commit. Going through from there, we're now able to use ES6 stuff, so we actually get to write code like it's meant to be written, which is fantastic. And so all of this has been, it feels really rapid fire, and this kind of release cycle improvements RFC shows you the feeling that I think the Ember community has had. And I get a lot of kind of like sighs and head shakes whenever I say, well, can I take a couple of days to upgrade Ember or to redo the deployment system, all these kind of pieces. And it feels like it's too much too quickly. But I think that what's incredible about it is that Ember is pretty much your most powerful framework that you can use. And we don't get in best or not best, but the most powerful framework as far as JavaScript development goes right now. And the fact that it's improving at the rate that it is improving, that most people are finding it hard to keep up with those improvements, just shows how powerful it's getting and how much further ahead of the curve it's going to be going forward in a couple of months and a couple of years. Because every release we feel like we have to upgrade because of all the things it gives us, because of the amount of code that we can delete and the amount of performance that we can create in our app. And then every new app that we start that has anything to do with the front end, we will be doing with Ember. So our new documentation site, again, even though it's static content, we'll just put the static content in fixtures and treat it like an Ember app, and we can use things like Ember Fire to make it look really pretty and smooth. And I think for us as a team, our entire front-end team is all kind of so ensconced in kind of Ember as an idea that we can really prototype and move through things really quickly and onboard people really quickly because it's just the way that the company works. There we go.
Great. Awesome. All right, so that was awesome. Our last speaker of the night here is Timothy. Timothy is from a company called Collectrium here in New York. They were an independent company doing a whole bunch of Ember, and now they're a smaller company and a bigger company still doing a whole bunch of Ember. So it should be exciting to hear some stuff about what they're up to. It's not working. Maybe try the other one. The other port. Second port. This one? No, just the second port. Oh,
there you go. All right. Can you hear me?
Awesome. Please give him a round of applause.
I will be brief. So my name is Timothy Kompanchenko. I am a CTO at Collectrium, a Christie's company. And I feel that we are a company that represents a cluster of companies that are on the end of consumer, very much consumer people. We have calls sometimes asking us, I have a hard time scrolling, can you help me scrolling on the phone? Those are the kind of users that we have in the art world. So not developers necessarily, simple reach, amazing stuff. That would be just like computer science, PhD level for the people. And so what we have is we have a platform with a web app as our main application, which is Ember. We also have native apps. We have to use them, as you can see, with using some SDKs for augmented reality, etc. HTML5 is not there yet, so we're using those. But the main app is Ember. The art world is pretty complex. It's an $80 billion business last year. There's a lot of things happening. People buy and sell. They store, they insure, they loan their works to build the provenance, to gain the value for the works that they have, the artworks, to sell them later, to collect them. So there's a lot of activities that are happening in the art world, and they all need to be kept track of. We help our users to keep track of it by offering them a collection management software and also augmenting their information with some of the data, art market data that we gather. And based on their collection, we give them more information about their collection. For example, if you purchased a work by an artist and we know how that artist is trending, we can give you an estimation maybe of where your collection goes in value. And we work with partners that provide services. On top of that, maybe people need to store things, insure things, ship things. when they loan their work to museums, they need to arrange all of that. So this is just a few sort of screenshots of how our app looks. This is some of the experience people will have. We go from helping people to manage their collection with providing, keeping track of invoices, acquisitions, insurance valuations, and to create sort of private viewing rooms where in a private environment they can share some of the works for sale purposes with selected people. Some people also, we partner with companies that require us to give them a little bit more enterprise level support as well. Some things that are coming out that are business challenges for this year is the Asia launch, which will be very interesting to see Ember in that and for us to develop it without knowing Chinese, and so forth. So what are the things that basically, how do we work with Ember? We start using Ember in 2012, and these are some of the guys that have been on the team from the beginning. You might see them online. And definitely we were in the Rails jam situation. And once CLI, well, I'm just going to the second one. We heavily relied on Ember data, Ember list view. Again, we sort of consider ourselves that we should do business of helping collectors manage their collections. We're not, we don't see ourselves as somebody whose main purpose is to write like libraries to use. And so the key for us was to be able to rely on already existing libraries like Ember Data and Ember List View. Of course, it was people know it was a rocky road, and now it's getting a lot easier. The Ember CLI and Ember add-ons system made it a whole lot easier for us. This is definitely an improvement. We were able to distribute our code base among several repositories and use the dependencies to link them together. And we're in the process of breaking it into components-based architecture as well so that we can reuse it in multiple instances of the app per use. We found that pod structure for us works the best for the organization of the code. It is challenging for us to save time to do some maintenance work for which, of course, no budget cares. But it is, we work with some of the Yap Labs, for example, and so we try to keep up with best practices. In our case, of course, our app is growing, observers are growing, things are happening, so we also have those challenges. We do host on Amazon AWS, and that allows us to create a global infrastructure in a practical way for our size of the company. And the Ember works very well with being able to deploy it. We have our own scripts right now, so we're looking to upgrade into the add-on as well. One of the things that makes it very easy for me to substantiate working with Ember for executive level of the people that I work with in the Christie's is that we do have great community. It's actually happens to be a big determining point for people who don't necessarily understand the technicalities. Microsoft, oh, there's a big company, they're going to support it. How you're going to write it from scratch? No. We have the sustainable community, and that happens to be actually a very, very important selling point for me when I sort of evangelize Ember among companies. This is kind of my brief. I was trying to rush through it because it's already the end, but I don't know if you want to turn to questions.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
I guess one thing is our doors are always open to talented people. So if anybody's interested, that's
there you go. That's
yeah.
Good. Yeah. Can we ask our two first speakers up here, Andre and Gaurav? Yeah, that one should be on. Just put it up. Questions?
Questions from Andre from SimpleReach. I think Betamax looked pretty cool. How do you handle the back-end part of testing that some of the other presenters were talking about, and reseeding the database and refreshing the database and stuff like that?
I mean, so I think that that's going to be this kind of perennial question, right? You have to at some point tie the two together. So we keep our seeds very up to date. So our seed files in our Rails app are incredibly complicated. We kind of treat them almost like a first-class citizen, like they're code. We test them. We make sure that when we run our seeds, they're able to produce the right thing that Ember will expect. And so our acceptance tests kind of have predetermined which seeds are going to be there. So whenever I run a fresh recording, so if we do have to change the API, what I'll do is I'll first run a DB seed in Rails, start it up, and then run the acceptance tests. And that's kind of the flow. And then once those recordings are there, we can work off of that and make sure that, and it works both ways, right? So if an API change is made, I will run the acceptance test to make sure that it hasn't broken anything. And if an Ember test is made, I run it against the recording to make sure that nothing has changed that way. So kind of the recording lets me cut it off and test on both sides.
Another question, comment? I've got one that I definitely want to ask you guys. As people have been working with Ember for a lot longer than people who are on new teams, how has working with Ember affected your hiring process and the prospects for finding people to work with? And do you find large audiences? Do people come to you because of it? Do people not come to you because of it?
I find like I have to convert people a little bit to it, but everybody is looking. I mean, people that I've worked with, they're like JavaScript person, but I've been looking for an opportunity to work with Ember, so people are eager. But it definitely is a little bit harder than maybe iOS developers, first.
Yeah, so we found that we've never had anybody be like, I don't want to work with Ember. We've had one hire now, or two hires now that had Ember experience before and wanted to work. So that was great, but the majority of the time it's somebody who's working in JavaScript, and we find that now we're able to train them up really quickly to work with Ember. And so they'll go from not knowing it to having a designer that hasn't really touched much code at all be able to work within an Ember code base and build out templates using angle bracket components and make it feel really natural for them. So it's been hard to find Ember people, but easy to train people to use Ember.
One more element for me, a big selling point is actually the community. Again, like I don't know if I sound like a fanboy, but it's true because I'm like, look, Millier is working with us, and they're like, yeah, we want to work. It's actually I've hired 2 people based on that, that on the community.
So I'd just like to add that when we look for people, we really find that there's not a whole lot of Ember developers out there, but there are a lot of people who are willing to learn and grow, and that's the key. So all you really, if you know JavaScript really well, just talk to us.
One more question we got over here.
So with all the upgrades that you've had to do over the last couple of years, sort of at each upgrade point, how do you balance the benefit you're going to get from in performance and productivity with the fact that you're going to have to take a fair amount of pain and time to do the upgrade?
It has never been. I've never been able to upgrade for the sake of upgrade. So I've always had to align it with the product change, and then justify it that way. But for example, from Rails Jam to Ember CLI, it was like a rewrite. But we took it as an opportunity to having learned a lot in that experience, and having instead of having difficulty of upgrading certain things, just rewrite them. But we also changed the product approach, so we've enhanced our product during that, and so we aligned those things together, and that was the only way it was possible for me.
I mean, I find I have to do a lot of advocating for it. I think that at any point in time, the business case for an upgrade is shaky at best, but it's kind of there, and the benefit comes later, right? It comes a couple months down the line. So advocating really hard for it. Things like upgrading to Ember CLI, there are a ton of benefits. As I said, we were able to, knowing that would have taken just our team a very long time to do, we pulled in 201 created, and in a week we were able to do that. So we took a week off, we upgraded Ember CLI, and that has saved us months of work, right? And we have that as a history to point to now. So now I can say, well, when I asked you to do Ember CLI, you said yes, and we did this, and now look at how much time we saved. I'm asking so that we can get ready for Ember 2.0, the time it'll save is not evident now, but based on what I told you before and it was true, believe me, right? That's the kind of argument I'm starting to use now, and it's, again, it's proved effective over time. It's proved that keeping up with what there is, being able to use modern add-ons, being able to use things like modal dialog and replace all of our old crappy modal code. We could do that because we kept on the upgrade path. We could not have done it if we hadn't. So.
Hi. This question is actually for all three of you. I was I'm a technical co-founder of a startup that we started around 2012, and we hired a team of consultants. Mashon, remember those guys? They actually hold the Ember Meetup in Philadelphia, but it was. I think when we were one of the first people to start using Ember, I think it was like .0 something back in 2012, like around that time. And I remember I was just afraid of the stuff that I was seeing, but then again, I didn't grok promises back then. So if someone who's sort of, I really left Ember programming at that time, but I've been in the community. That's the thing, because Ember community does rock. So I've been to most of the meetups, but I just haven't been able to sink my teeth into it. So now Luke and Noel are like bringing me back into Emberland, kicking and screaming. If there's one thing, if you can go, whoever, you guys have probably been way back in those days, 2012, and you were to say, dude, like fall down the rabbit hole here. So I've heard like router, Ember CLI, and all of that. What's the one thing that you would recommend from someone who was programming Ember way back when to somebody who's like getting their teeth sunk into it again, from all of you? And thanks for the fish. Inside joke. We programmed fish in SVG fish in Ember when we paired last time, and I was like, oh, this is so cool.
So I just like to first say, if you've worked with Ember 2 years ago and you're working with it now, it's a world of difference. I am talking night and day. Try it again. 3 years ago is probably even more than I would know because I wasn't around 3 years ago. But I would say that it's night and day over the last 2 years. I would say that it's fantastic how much effort has come out of the community. It's fantastic that that they move so fast. I would like to see more documentation support, but I love the fact that it has changed so much for the better.
I mean, I think from a pure business standpoint, back 2 3/4 to 3 years ago when I started, it was the wrong decision to move to Ember. I think the same for Simple Reach. It was the wrong decision to move to Ember at that point in time. It wasn't ready. From a personal standpoint, it was great because I learned a ton. And I got involved in this community and I'm now able to use it. But that all changed, right? Ember is now at the point where people can pick it up really quickly, start businesses with it quickly, and have that pay off. I think the add-ons for me, personally, is the biggest thing. It's kind of, I started out as a WordPress developer, and so my toe into open source was WordPress plugins. And I'm kind of seeing the same thing now with Ember add-ons, where even if you are not, Stefan Penner, who lives and breathes the metal of the browsers, you can create something of value for the community, and so people are creating things of value for the community from the add-ons that would never have been able to do it before. And there's now so much value out there that you can just plug into your app and make it go. There's so much code you don't have to write that you had to write back then. So that would be the big difference for me.
I mean, some things are the same. I mean, I'm a fan because of its philosophy. First of all, it started with Next. It went into like web objects for me, where I started. Went to Sprout Core. It stays with Ember. It's a certain way of programming. But some things changed, and for me, the biggest thing that now that is different from Ember then is the fact that we are thinking in components. We are thinking in the way of components. And that's just a way of thinking for me from like product integration, but also it affects like how we structure our code and how we integrate it together. So that's, if there's one thing, that's my thing.
Are you talking about pods?
No, I'm talking about component, like building components that are reusable within your code and not necessarily think about app holistically, like as one app, one master app. Maybe that's how we approached it before. Now we're able to easily build components that we can reuse in different parts of the app, or combine apps, have different variations of app with reusing components, reusable components through add-ons or any other way. But that was
Thanks. One quick answer also to your question, Snugs, which is the RFCs. So the kind of decision-making process now in the Ember community for Ember, Ember Data, Ember CLI, some other projects, is around this RFC process. And it's an ability to see the design process take shape. So if you read those and you start to understand the design philosophy that leads to the features that you're using, you'll be able to use those features so much more effectively. So that's a quick answer. My question, is for Andre, which when you were showing your deployment mechanism, is it true that you have you can not only choose the Ember version that you're looking at, but also the API version you're looking at?
Yeah. So we use a little bit of magic in the deployment system to do that. So yeah, so we can choose which version of Ember and which one of the test APIs we have to run against. So we have 4 right now that we could possibly test against. The way we do it is it's a Rails app that serves the index. It pulls it down off of CloudFront. So whenever you hit that deploy button, it saves into a deployments collection, which is the version. So instead of having CloudFront like S3 index go to just / whatever, it goes to what was pushed in the deploy. If we add those query parameters, it looks at those query parameters and then decides to look for that file instead in CloudFront. If we add a query parameter that says the API is different, in Ember CLI, you define what your API URL is. And so ours is webapi.simplereach.com. And so what we do in the Rails app is basically if you've passed that parameter and it fits one of our test servers, we replace that with the test server in that index file before it gets served up. And so now the index file is just pointing to the test server instead, and everything just works flawlessly from there.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you all so much thank you guys for speaking and for answering questions and all this, and to all of our speakers, and for all of you for hanging around. And hope you look forward to the 2.0 release. We'll see you next month.
Hey, couple of quick announcements. Number 1, drinks at Crooked Knife on 14th Street.